Today in the hot sheet, we're joined by someone whose career has been all about ideas, finding them, shaping them, and helping the right ones reach millions of people. He's been a key creative force behind ESPN's 30 for 30 films and the 30 for 30 podcast, which was just named one of the top 100 best podcasts of all times. And now he's running his own company, Neuhaus Ideas, a company that translates big ideas into commercial product. He produces the Puzzler podcast with AJ Jacobs and curates the Nonfiction hot list. Adam's career has been all about turning curiosity into culture. And we can't wait to dive in. Adam, welcome to the hot sheet.
Nicely done. I like that. Thank you very much.
You've had an amazing career. You've built your career around ideas. Um, so were you always an idea guy, or did you grow into that, or how did you start your career in
I think I've always self-identified as an ideas person. On my personal website, there's a report card from my third grade teacher, my second grade teacher, and in that I feel very seen. It says Adam contributes very creative ideas to group settings, is able to kind of see that. And I've always been able to do that. I've always been enthralled by ideas. Never quite knew what direction that would take me overall. Uh, but it's always been something I've always been good in a brainstorm, good at kind of seeing what the possibility of something could be as opposed to what was right in front. So it was always something that I use to identify, but only now as I kind of been in my career longer and longer, I'm able to kind of find a better way of describing what I do for a creative process.
it makes sense that you love puzzles too, because an idea is like a puzzle. It's something you have to figure out.
I will also say puzzle is like the best metaphor for just about anything. So it's one of the reasons, yeah, I was so excited about that space of puzzles because it felt like, yeah, it's something that people understand. And then people have that struggle, and then aha moment. So yeah, I think it applies too when you're trying to solve for anything. It could be a problem on set, could be an idea itself, but that kind of looking for the right next move is something that I've always been fascinated by.
And you have an idea or like a new idea, it just sparks so much joy. Like there's like possibility. Like, what is this? What could it be? And there's so much joy that comes with it. And you've always been so positive about all these ideas. Like anything that it is, you're like, yes, let's go.
Well, I hope not anything. I think,
Not anything.
ideally I've created some level of discernment about an idea for both the moment, for the format, for what it is, and I certainly have had to grow into the concept of you might have an idea, but then you let it settle, you go to sleep, you wake up the next day, and does it still look the same as an idea? But I do find that at the very beginning of a process, an idea can be very tender and very vulnerable, and so to protect it and to see what it can become is a crucial part of the process. And as I go through my career, the again that discernment, the ability to see an idea and say that's a good idea, but not a great idea, and I'm going to lay down that idea. I talk a lot about not falling victim to the B plus idea. The B plus idea sounds really good. Oh, maybe if we did it, great. Oh, maybe if this thing happened, it'll be an A idea. And you talk yourself into it when in fact it's a B plus idea. And that the real wise move is to lay down the B plus and keep space in your universe for the A idea to show up. But that is very hard to do. And especially people who are not as versed in ideation. They get very excited to have something that even seems possible. And so they almost will themselves to making it an A. And I believe that it's very rare for that actually to happen. That if it's an actual B idea, it's really hard to make the leap forward to an A.
How do you identify? I mean, like, what has happened over the course of your career to be able to identify an A versus a B, and when to abandon an idea and when to continue with one?
Yeah, it's something you're continually learning, and so I can't say I'm a master at it. I've developed my own system. I think there's a bit of a misconception about development, that development is only coming up with brand new shiny ideas. Well, that's one part of it, but another part of it is understanding the marketplace, watching a lot of stuff, understanding where your idea falls within the market of ideas, both stuff that's been made, stuff that's being pitched, stuff that's in the zeitgeist. All of that requires looking into those and consuming stuff so that you understand it. The other part of development would be helping another person's idea go from, this to, like, you slightly turned it this way, it might be a better idea. And the ability to talk to creatives who are very possessive and vulnerable with their ideas to help them, evolve their idea. So I think it's a little bit of a mix for my own personal work now, because I have so many reps of hearing ideas. I've been in development almost exclusively for my whole career, that I've heard lots and lots of ideas. I've seen, not only have I heard those ideas, but then I've heard the ideas, I've seen the things made, and they can reference back to the idea itself when it was pitched, and seeing the trend lines across, 2 decades in the industry of those types of things. So you understand those things. But even for myself, because as much as I talk about the B plus, that is hard earned wisdom. I have certainly talked myself into many B plus ideas, and there are lots of ideas that I've been pitching. There are a few ideas that I've been pitching for over 15 years, where I just kind of can't shake it. It still hasn't sold, still not anything, but there's something about it that I really like. So there's a little bit of that. But what I've done for myself, and I actually recommend this for most creatives, I might get an idea and be very excited by it. And I will always kind of trust my inner world, trust my heart, trust my gut, try to get out of my mind and into um, these other radars of my body for creative. But then I also have a rational part. And so for me to decide, because I'm a small company, I can't just take on a million ideas. And so I also created for myself a filter for myself. So it's 20 questions that I ask myself for an idea, and I grade them 1 through 5, so that, obviously an idea that's 100 is like a no-brainer, yes, but a lot of times you'll be very excited about something, then you'll run it through the filter and it'll be an 84. And then it's like, well, should I be spending time in this if it's an 84? Like, let me look at it. So even for myself, where I trust my gut implicitly, and I've really worked on developing my gut around new ideas, I also have my own fail-safe in order to, because if you're going on a journey of an idea, and especially if you're moving in the nonfiction space, you're almost saying, I'm going to spend the next 5 years of my life on this. Maybe there's a shorter path. Maybe you sell something quickly and it gets made the next year. But typically, for most ideas, you are going on a long journey. And so, do you want to go on that journey? Be very careful about what you do, because everything's an opportunity cost. If you go on a journey with one idea, it means you may not be able to go on another idea that comes through.
Wow, I feel like we're getting a thesis on ideas. I love this. This is so cool. And I love that you have a formula for ideas, because I know, I mean, we met at Radical Medium pitching ideas, and it was like this explosion of enthusiasm. It was so fun. And that is the fun part. But you're right. You have to be disciplined about ideas, because they're time consuming and they're not always going to work. So you
Yeah,
want to
well,
kind of
also,
bet on the right
if you
horse.
work in development, you better develop a very tough skin. I mean, majority of my career has been failure. Majority of my career has been pitching projects. I only have had a very rare few things actually go through from development phase into production and out into the world. And that's pretty normal and very hard to deal with, where you might work on an idea in development for a year and a half, 2 years, feel like it's great, pitch it out, and then nobody buys it. Then what do you do? And you tell people, no, I'm really good at my job. No, really, I am. But if nothing comes into the world,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
challenging. And so a lot of times the producers, the productions, they get handed an idea. They get handed an idea with a budget, and maybe it's, picked up some, nicks and bruises along the way through the process, but you're given money to go make a thing based on that. But in development, you're not, you have to get it over the line. You have to take it from a 0 to 1. And that I find to be one of the most challenging parts of the business.
Would you be willing to give us a couple of samples of the type of questions that you ask?
Yeah, I mean, I would. It's less of a overarching filter. If that makes sense, right? It's a filter for Neuhaus ideas. So, for me, it might be at this present moment. Am I able to be one of the core creatives of this idea? Right? Is it an idea that I'm passing through with somebody else, or is it something that I actually can add value to? It might be, is there a business to be built on this idea? So really, like, the questions themselves really just depend on where you are. And it's a filter that I'm always updating for myself based on the types of projects that I'm interested in. Um, so it's less like here's this objective way of evaluating ideas, but it's more like why would this idea be right for Neuhaus Ideas? Why would it be right for me in what I'm currently looking for? But generally, if I were to give kind of general filters, it would be, does it feel both familiar and unexpected? Does it convey a human emotion in a very positive way? Can you not take your eyes off the main talent? Is there something more than just the A storyline? I mean, these are the types of questions that you would put into your own filter on looking at ideas. And again, everything is different. For a podcast, it's different. For a short film, for a doc, for a series, all of them have like slightly different versions of them. But when it comes to Neuhaus Ideas, I'm looking to find projects and worlds that I might be able to build more than one creative output, if that makes sense. So it's not just, here's this doc, now it's done, I sold it to Netflix. But
It's
instead, this is a world I can build lots of different things in.
like a multi-platform
Yeah,
type of
that's stuff
thing.
that's interesting to me in this moment,
Sure.
but has always been interesting to me as far back as my career has gone.
So, so many questions, but how do you, with all the failure, because first of all, how many ideas have you, could you
Pitched?
say that that you've pitched, you've come across, like,
Yeah, it's a great question.
because the
I would
failure part
say,
of it,
yeah,
yeah.
I would say upwards of 5,000, I would say.
Whoa.
And now some of those could be quick hitters, and some, like I said, I've been developing for, over a decade, but I would say somewhere in that neighborhood, if not more, of projects that I've taken out to market, tried to get sold in whatever particular way. I've also spent time on both sides. I've been on the sell side and on the production company side, both for larger companies like Radical Media, Original Media, and then on my own as well at Neuhaus Ideas. And then on the buy side at ESPN, where I would frequently get in the neighborhood of 1,000 to 1,500 pitches a year. And that's a whole other type of thing, which is, how do you decide which ones to pick and which ones to do? And that's a slightly different part of development. And I would say, objectively, a bit of an easier play. There might be a lot coming in, but you're the money, and so you get to decide a little bit about what helps to get made when you really kind of get people on board. So I would say, overall, though, yeah, it's a lot of ideas. And how do I keep my spirits high is a great question. A lot of people think development's very sexy. They like the idea of coming up with an idea, or they think it's great, but try doing it for a good amount of time. Try having 6 months where nothing gets set up. Try those types of things, or frequently now development's not really paid for. So it's really free labor that's going in, that lots of companies either employ people to do development for them or are cutting back on that kind of R&D and just waiting for ideas that come more fully formed into their house.
Wow. And just to get an idea of what that failure to success ratio is, out of those 5,000 ideas, how many were
I mean,
greenlit, would you say?
I would say maybe I've gotten 10 across. Maybe more. I mean, again, like, how many from a production company's sell side? Less than 10 in my whole career. And
Amazing.
a couple of projects where, if you talk to any development person, they will have stories of getting to the 1 yard line. And then all of a sudden, the exec who was championing your thing gets laid off, or all of a sudden something in the network changes. And so something that you've been carrying around for a year all of a sudden gets swept away. And it is very hard to help less creative people see the vision of something that's not totally obvious. And so that's a hard scenario. It can still be hard when you're at the network side, but hard in a much different way. But yeah, I would say less than 10 out of 5,000 pitched.
Amazing.
You just touched on something there where like the executive leaves. I've had that happen a couple times. Like what can what advice do you have if you do have a project that's moving, it's at the 1 yard line, that executive gets laid off or takes another job somewhere else, and your project's committed to that company? Do you have any advice like how to get that project out of that company, or what like how do you handle that situation?
I don't think there's a playbook on it.
Yeah.
I mean, most likely it's going to die as an idea. I mean, at least in that spot. And then restarting an idea, even if you went back to the exec who's at a new spot, they now have a different filter. The other thing about development is that you are trying to think of something that will play in the marketplace a year and a half from now, 2 years from now. So you're essentially trying to future proof an idea. And so if you spent a year in development and now it didn't work out at that company, and now you're going out trying to pitch it again, it might be a different landscape. The idea itself doesn't exist in a vacuum as like, this is an amazing idea, regardless of circumstances. That is not how it typically works. Circumstances are a huge part of it, at least on an idea that's not based on access to a person or a world.
So what kind of like what inspires you about ideas? What keeps you going? Because like in the last year I dedicated, to, development, my own development. I had some ideas. It was super fun, got some meetings at Netflix and Hulu and all the big tables and if they ultimately passed and it was so disappointing. And I was like, I just spent a year doing this. This is so brutal. So like I personally experienced that so I can understand, but like what keeps you going? Like what keeps you inspired to
Yeah.
to just wake up every day and keep hammering at the idea?
I think if you're going to be in development, you're naturally a curious person. You have to love storytelling. And I'm a consumer and not just of down stuff that's down the middle that's on Netflix or released into theaters. I am watching shorts, listening to podcasts, reading books, going to live shows. I'm just always intrigued by new voices and new ways of telling stories. So if you don't have that love hard baked in, you're probably gonna have a hard time being long term in the development side. And then I would say I still think the cherry or goal of it is still appealing to me. There's still an outsized return if you could have a hit, if you can really crack something. Now, the rules of the game have changed quite a bit, and so I've changed in terms of how I think about that in general. But uh, yeah, I think I love storytelling and I love consuming that stuff. So that is part of it, but that doesn't mean that I don't also go through periods of time where I'm unsure that what am I doing with this process? Like this is an outrageous way to go through a career. Uh, yeah. So I don't know what to keep you. The media right now I think is I definitely I would say the media world right now is not as dire as everyone has made it out to be. I think there is actually incredible opportunity now, but it is quite different. And what can be challenging is people who spend a lot of time in one mode of career making of an industry, and then that doesn't exist anymore. And that's a real challenge for people to uh, find new ways of telling stories, or you know maybe have to care about something that on the storytelling side they don't care about. That's also very challenging. Maybe there's younger audience, like new talent you've never heard of, new influencers you never heard of, and you don't really want to do that stuff. But uh, this is an industry that's always been hard. When people talk about that it's hard now, I'm like, when was it not hard? It was always challenging. And yes, there were moments where there might have been more money in the system, but I think that's part of what makes entertainment one of the most competitive industries, is that has a level of sex appeal. It has the potential for outsized gains if you really hit, and it can be really fun along the way. So I am trying not to participate in the doom and gloom conversations around the current day, because it's useless. It's not productive energy.
When pitching nowadays, because you said that there's constantly these shifts. Are you what are your practices? I mean, is it a one sheet? Is it a sizzle reel? Is it prove it with a podcast first? Like what method are you using at Newhouse Ideas?
Yeah, it depends on every project, but I think uh, a general consensus right now is that the networks and the streamers have just even more leverage right now, so they're demanding more as part of the development. So uh, I would say like the materials don't matter as much. It's more like what are you representing? So if I have access to Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, I don't even need a one sheet. I can just
Yeah.
walk in and say I have that, right? And if it's a story nobody's heard of, then maybe I really need to do more work to prove it out. Uh, People have gotten a little have used the term intellectual property, I think, a little bit off base. Just because you have intellectual property doesn't make it a good pitch. I think people think, oh, well, I made a podcast about it. Now I should sell a show. It's like, well, was the podcast a hit? Was the podcast? No, no, no. But like, I have IP now, and it's like, you have a story that you have access to, but who do you have access to? What are your connections in the world? What do you have that nobody else has? Those are the things you really need. So I have pitches that are a deck where it's a whole bunch of ideas and I don't have access, but I felt like the angle is unique. I have other things that are based on getting access to a particular organization or a person and pitching those things out. And I have other things that are, more format driven that is a little bit kind of, you know, are you landing at the right time with what they need? And have you done enough work to showcase that you really know your idea inside and out? It's a little less of the era right now where you can just throw an idea on paper and then someone's gonna be like, that sounds good. Let's give it a shot. That era it does not exist anymore. So there is a lot. And to your point earlier, Jen, I mean, you spend a year putting together the access, getting the talent comfortable with you, getting them excited about the process, signing them to a legal deal, creating materials, getting the pitches on the dockets of your people, and then everybody might pass.
Yep.
And that is a
That's
challenging scenario.
that's what I am experiencing right now. It's very tough. Like, I mean, I this is my first time like really developing like shows. I've done a short film, as you know, because you were the producer on my short film, Saving Happy Birthday, which was independently funded and all that. But this was, more commercial type projects where, you have to have that high level access. And it was fun putting it together and getting into the room, but getting the no was hard. Like, I don't wanna give up on the idea, but when no one's saying yes, it makes it a little
Yeah.
tough,
And it's hard when the goal is like, oh, well, we got the pitch at Netflix. Then you have to remember from the Netflix side. And it was the same as ESPN. They might have had 4 pitches that day. And they might, they're going through hundreds and thousands of pitches and having to decide which ones. And by the way, when you're inside at a network doing development, it's not always about the best idea. There are all kinds of considerations, political, corporate, that you have no idea about when you're pitching, that are actually the main thing. Maybe they have something already in that category a little bit. Maybe they know that their boss doesn't like this type of story. Maybe they've committed to something 3 years out and they're trying to balance in another direction. All these things have nothing to do with your pitch, have everything to do with if it's going to get through or not. And that can be very challenging for creatives because there's nothing you can do about that.
Well, that's an important point because you don't know, and so you just take the rejection like they don't like my idea, but there's a million other variables going into that decision, and I know the bar is extremely high right now. Like, Hulu said they only commission 8 nonfiction projects a year. 8. They probably, if you looked at 1,500 projects at ESPN a year, Hulu's definitely looking at that many, if not more, and they greenlight 8 projects a year. So they liked my project. It was flattering to be in the room to get that far, but the bar is really high, and we didn't quite make it. We got to, like, the 10-yard line, and And it was like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and I think, that's a little bit of the moment. I think there will be new buyers and new places to distribute will emerge, like it always does. So there will be places that don't exist right now that will be places that have money and want to buy stuff. It's at this particular moment with the consolidation that's happened over the last couple of years, we have the least amount of buyers and the least amount of interest in nonfiction storytelling from a commissioning standpoint than we've had in a long time. And to your point, that means that they can keep the highest bar that they want. And so they want something also that is very easy to market. That's the other thing people don't think about. I have a great story, but it's
Mm.
how easy is it to market for them? And they're having a hard time too. The marketing departments of these streamers don't know how to get something to break through. They are also trying to be in a crowded marketplace, even if they have a murder that everybody's heard of or a celebrity that everyone's heard of. They are still having a hard time getting the numbers on their projects. Even Netflix, and Netflix has the other problem, which is they have so much stuff. So even if you get through, you get 2 days of marketing and it either hits or doesn't hit, and then they're on to the next thing. So I'm most excited about what's emerging, what's going to come next. And I think that's why I'm very excited about the kind of creator economy in general. And just this idea that maybe you don't even need a network. Like you need the money. Certainly you need some way to get money, but maybe there are other ways to get money. And do you really need a network to distribute something nowadays? I'm not sure anymore. If you really create something amazing, yes, there's YouTube, certainly, but I think there's going to be other things. Like, I don't know. I mean, why can't Selena Gomez through her Instagram distribute a series? She's got more followers than a lot of the streamers. Why couldn't she just put it out through her thing? Or things like that. And so I think now what is very exciting about the market is now the tools off the shelf that you can use to distribute, whether on YouTube or other places, and to monetize from those things. There are now lots of case studies about how to do this and how to get it out there. And now maybe it's not something that's big and broad for Hulu. Maybe it's a real niche, but maybe you can find every person in that niche. And maybe you could really bring it to that niche and figure out a way to get paid directly from that niche. And that's what I love about the creator economy. And that's what I love about where things are going. That you don't need something to be a unicorn smash hit that every single person has seen. Open a Hollywood Reporter or a Variety now, and you will run across some headline that will say, this is the biggest show, whatever, and you will have never heard of it before. And that's across podcasts and anime and doc and scripted. And so like that is exciting to me because that just means that you can have a hit now, that just finds the right audience for it.
It kind of shows like there's so many bad ideas out there too. Like there's shows where you're like, who made that? Like, why would you ever make that? That is my idea is so much better than that one. Like, how does that happen? But there's probably an audience for that idea that you might think is
Yeah, and also
stupid.
like you might have an idea and then it goes through a network process and then there are so many things on the path of a small idea or an idea that sounds great in the room that you orchestrate and then 2 years later it coming out. So sometimes it just doesn't work in that way. Uh and it's more amazing to me that we think that data is going to tell us about a hit. That is the thing that I try to push back the most upon, which is if you want something to be a paint by numbers piece of art, then you will end up with a paint by numbers piece of art. And you will not want to put that over your living room. And that one of my favorite words, which I think gets just forgotten in the landscape right now, is just unexpected. Unexpected is a word that's where hits come from. They do not come from, oh my God, I don't see, oh yes, that was a great idea. And it was a monster hit. Lots of times it comes out of nowhere. I think about, you know, Adolescence on Netflix. I think about, was it the reindeer one, Baby Reindeer? What was it called?
Oh yeah, Baby Reindeer. Yeah.
that was an Edinburgh show. Like, and and these things, nobody would have said that would have been a hit from the very beginning. So there's so many things you can't control with it. And I definitely don't like looking back and saying, well, yeah, I knew that was going to work. But I think they've put a little bit too much reliance on the data. And I'm all about data. I'm all about it, using it as a tool in the development process, using it as a tool for programming. I just also believe that there's an expertise to people who are curating as humans.
Well, it's not,
And yeah,
well, the data certainly says something, so it's a useful tool, but I think over relying on it is a mistake as well, because you have to take risk. You have to have that,
yes.
right? Like where does risk come in to this?
Well, I think this idea that entertainment companies are these investable companies that will just give you this return like you're selling, AI chips. It's like it's not widgets. As much as you want to think about it as widgets, it's not widgets. And yeah, it's not gonna be that way. And so I just wish that, and maybe this does exist, and I'm just speaking again, I don't know the inner workings of places, but if you're going to use data as your primary source of whether you greenlight something or not, there also should be a bucket of money internally where you're allowing your development team, your experts, your people who are seeing lots of things, understanding trend lines, who watch a lot of projects, to say, this person, this idea in this way is a good bet. Let's take a bet on that. So I think it just needs to be balanced a bit more.
Well, without risk, so many things wouldn't happen. I mean, we just interviewed George McTeague, who created Live PD, one of the highest rated cable shows ever especially on Friday night. And that idea came out of like a sheer chance. Like, he was tasked to come up with an idea on Friday to pitch to the executives Monday, and he watched a box set of Cops 5 times, and it wasn't until he watched the behind the scenes where he was like, what if we reverse engineer this and do like a studio live thing instead of like a photographed and edited thing?" And they pitched it and they thought he was nuts, but they decided to take a chance on it, and there you go. That was the show that, the prequel to Live PD. It was a show called Busted on MTV that ultimately became Live PD. But that wouldn't have happened if he didn't, there was no data for that.
Yeah, and
Like, the
like
data
again,
didn't even exist.
the data can tell you lots of different stories. This idea that data is infallible, that it's objective, it could not be more wrong. Like, what are the contexts of the data? How much? There are so many ways to skew data in so many ways. So people who rely on it, I would just love to see the track record of the stuff afterwards that they selected. But yeah, there's still serendipity. There's still moments. And I think going back to your other question, what gets you excited? The idea that you might come up with a live PD and own a $500 million franchise, right? And off like something you did on one weekend. That is something that is pretty unique to the entertainment industry, and something that it's lottery ticket a little bit, but it's still enough uh, to get you excited to play.
Well, the content creator space seems to be taking a lot of risks, a lot of big swings, a lot of risks. People are just doing their thing, their idea.
And I think that's incredibly positive, and the idea that you might be able to make a business for yourself, and it doesn't have to be a monster hit to have it like kick off money and be fulfilling and make money and do all those things. That wasn't possible 15 years ago at the least, where there was really only, you had to get it on a network, you had to get it on a channel to make a show, to then build out the rest. Now you don't need that. And I think even the pipes of the streamers, again, and the marketing, uh, it's useful, and it can be very useful to build something, but it's not the only way anymore. And if you really have
Yeah.
a vision, especially an entire generation has come up with the format of one person to many, the YouTube format of like a person or two people speaking to the multitudes. That is kind of a new format from like the last 25 years. And a lot of people have done amazing things with that.
Where
Remove all the middle people and all the parts and all the overhead and all the stuff, yeah, you might not be able to charge as much. You might not have to charge as much to have it, fulfill you and make you money along the way. And that's something that I have leaned in quite a bit with the puzzler, uh, because that is something where we're making a podcast and we've developed an audience, but really the podcast is a bit of a Trojan horse and we're building a larger puzzle company. And we are really just trying to say, can we find 250,000 puzzle fans around the world and gently monetize them directly into our pockets? And I'm very interested in charging people $1, $3, $5, $10, especially if the audience knows it's going directly into the creator's pockets. That's something that's very appealing to me. So I don't need it to be a unicorn, home run, grand slam, slam dunk, 4-quadrant hit. It can just be a steady Eddie that, over delivers for the audience in a way that makes them feel good about, and can create its own little economy. And that's what we're trying to create.
You don't need the whole pie, just a slice of the pie.
Yeah, and there's no scarcity mindset to it either. The pie just expands. You can go grab the pie. There's not like somebody else succeeding doesn't mean you're not succeeding. It is just about attention and how you can grab it.
Creator economy. Are you seeing projects that aren't getting picked up going that route now?
I was helping lead creative development for 30 for 30, which is more kind of full docs that need a lot of money. So obviously a lot of the creator economy stuff is low production value, right? Because it's just easy to, like we're doing right here, to put up a camera, to put up a feed, and just to kind of make it and see if you can gather attention by that. So I wouldn't say that there was that version of something that, oh my God, this is amazing, but they decided not to do it with us because they had so many other options. That is the ability to kind of commission something in a 6 or 7 figure way is still very powerful for a documentarian. But there's certainly lots of projects that people take so many years, they get grants, they do it piece by piece, and that's certainly something. But that wasn't something that we had necessarily at ESPN. Although you could say Barstool Sports is creator economy, right? I mean, that literally started in that way, and that became a massive, huge business.
Let's talk about ESPN for a minute, because you had a very prestigious job there as senior director of development at ESPN Films. I mean, a lot of people would drop dead for that career. It sounds very sexy and very cool to be in the sports world, and you have some fun credits under your belt. What was your time at ESPN like, and what was the development process like, and what were some of your big wins, things that you feel proud about having been at ESPN?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Connecticut kid, so ESPN in Bristol, Connecticut. I'm as long time a fan of that brand as possible, and 30 for 30, obviously. So it was like my favorite brand at my favorite brand, and it was very exciting to be part of the kind of second chapter of 30 for 30 that they had launched and established. And actually, when I arrived 4 months later, they won the Oscar for OJ Made in America. So, which I had, nothing to do with. So it was like, oh, great. Now that's the bar that we have to play with. But it was great I really enjoyed being on the network side. It made me a better development person by understanding how the sausage is made on that side, and identifying ideas, identifying filmmakers, trying to find fresh ideas in the mix, not just relying on what's getting pitched to you, but instead trying to think about areas that were kind of empty space that we might go into. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is I had a real hand in helping open up the aperture at ESPN to not just think about sports as a sports docs, but to think about words like athleticism and competition and adventure and fandom, and that those things can open up lots of other things that are definitely now feels like, of course, those things are part of the sports world, but hadn't had a lot of 30 for 30s made in that way. And so, we made The Good, the Bad, the Hungry about Joey Chestnut and Kobayashi and the hot dog eating competition. And so, of course, now that feels like, of course, that would be a 30 for 30, but that was, at the time, very very on a limb for what it was. Or, for example, I had a little bit to do with helping Be Water, the Bruce Lee film, happen at ESPN. And again, uh, that was something that we had on our internal list as we were thinking about icons that hadn't had anything done on them. And I happened to be at a film festival and ran into a producer that I had worked with previously and a filmmaker who had a project that was just kind of starting to gestate. And it was like, yes, we're 100% yes. And that was one where from the moment I had a coffee with them at the film festival, I went back on Monday to work and I just marched into my boss's office, like, we're doing this. Like, this is a guaranteed yes. And still had to fight to get it approved, had to fight to get the budget, had to fight in all those ways. But I like those stories that are a bit left or right of center for sports. And the idea being, how do you tell a story that just happens to take place within the world of sports, but is about something larger? There's a larger theme there. So there's that. There's also the opportunity to work with really amazing creators. I don't necessarily believe in topic-led development where it's, okay, well, we're just going to do the overview story of this. Okay, but what's more interesting to me is when there's a director, especially a doc director of regard, who has a real artistic sensibility, who wants to tell a particular story in a particular way. So the American Gladiators documentary by Ben Berman is like as interesting and offbeat and strange a documentary that ESPN has ever done. And I feel like says a lot about capitalism and the American dream, and sticking to an idea over long periods of time, and is not done in an A to Z format. So those are the types of things that I feel really proud about, or projects that took many years to kind of come to fruition. Even when you're the money, you have to convince enough stakeholders internally, and where the budget's already been committed to. So there are projects like those that just felt great. And then certainly the 30 for 30 podcast. That was a creative endeavor that we didn't know was going to work. Just because it existed in one format, could it actually exist in the podcast space and be compelling? And we ended up hiring some of the most talented podcast producers in the space. And what I'm really proud of is not just that it was like one hit. Like, we put out lots of different things that really hit. The Bikram podcast by Julia Lowry Henderson, the Sterling Affairs, which was to high acclaim as like one of the best podcasts, and then was eventually adapted to FX. So all of these types of stories, and then being able to look at these stories and then figure out what's the right place for them. Are they a podcast? Are they a feature? Are they a short? And really understanding the nuances of each of those, and being able to talk to the creators and help them say, I know you pitched this in this way, but have you thought about doing it this way? And having those type of uh, collaborative conversations with real artists, that part was so exciting. But it's amazing. I'm 2.5 years out of ESPN right now, and there are still projects that I developed that are coming out. So even the process when you're the money still takes many, many years to get them through and in the budget and made and the whole thing. So it's a long process. And I think it's another challenging thing about development as well. You might develop something and then you might leave the job, and then it's a hit, and they're not going to necessarily remember where it was in the development phase. And that's something that development people are very keen and aware of, and trying to raise our hands on things that so people recognize the work that gets done at the very early part of a process.
Do you have a favorite 30 for 30?
The favorite 30 for 30. I would say among the ones that I worked on, I would say probably the Be Water and the American Gladiators are two of my favorite. I also am on a campaign to remind people to watch the 30 for 30s of the last 5 or 7 years. Everyone quotes a 30 for 30 from the first edition, which was, over 10 plus years ago. And just to remind people that there's a lot of amazing films that have been released over the last 5 or 6 years that are better in many ways than some of those first ones that came out. The first batch was 30, and there's some that are, the Two Escobars, obviously classic, the U, there's so many classics in there. And not all of them are classics in those first batch.
Yeah.
There's a bunch that weren't that good either. Um, and I believe as well that if you're not willing to have a failure in a development slate, then you're not really risking anything. You're not pushing the envelope far enough. So it's hard to make something really excellent, but yeah, those are some, and there's other smaller ones that I feel like people maybe haven't heard of, that are also just extraordinary from my perspective. I helped develop the short called Black Girls Play, which is the story of hand games and the rhythm in hand games. And again, thinking about how that applies to being a sports story. Um, you know, I had a hand in helping develop Long Gone Summer, which was the Maguire Sammy Sosa story, which at the time no one really able to get them to sit down. And then we were really one of the first, with the director AJ Schnock, to like make that happen. Um, so there's lots of things like that, and just the ability to work with directors that I really love, and the idea that you don't have to be a sports documentary director. That's not a thing. I'm just looking for a great storyteller. They could be a fan or not a fan, and many times people who are not necessarily fans can bring something totally new to a story.
Yeah, we should do the story of the first class of women in the was it mountain bike downhill X Games.
There you go. Got access. Jen Nelson. There she is.
Yeah. That was,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, our little tribe, but they're pretty cool. These good ladies. We're still friends. It's awesome.
Love that.
Do you stay in touch with them?
Oh yeah, yeah. We're friends. You know, we go through something like that together. You're kind of bonded for life, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we were on ESPN on the X Games long ago. We were the guinea pigs. We were the kids doing crazy stuff.
That's fun.
But I have to say, Be Water, oh, that film, I loved that film.
Great. Yeah. Great.
I mean, Bruce Lee is one of my most favorite people, let alone athletes ever. And if he was alive, he would be my dream guest on the hot sheet.
And by the way, like what's most exciting about it was director Bao Gwyn. You know, he was somebody who'd made stuff before, but hadn't, had a huge breakout hit. And on the back of Be Water, he did Greatest Night in Pop for Netflix, which became a monster hit for that. So there's also something very gratifying about the class of directors who make it 30 for 30. And we would talk a lot about that too. We wanted all the great directors to at least have made one 30 for 30. And then to see them, not just Bao, but his director, Julian Nottingham, who started a company called Dorothy Pictures, which became a monster in the documentary space. Not just on the back of that, she's an amazing producer, but because, having exposure on a project like that, I think getting to see where people go and what they make after that is really, really exciting.
You said about that you don't have to have a sports background to be a sports producer. But it does seem like the sports world is sort of small and insular in a certain way. Is that right? Like,
Yeah, I would say for like an access piece, probably hard to not be a sports person. If it's an access follow series, I think you need to be part of that world. And yeah, there's just been there's a few production companies that have gotten a lot of the work for sure, but for good reason. I mean, my former bosses, Connor Shell and Libby Geis, who run Words and Pictures, I mean, they produced OJ and they produced The Last Dance. If you have a great sports doc, I would go to Words and Pictures as well. And so they have continually turned out, such incredible docs. And so they do that stuff. And then you have places like, Skydance, which does a big deal with the NFL, or Religion of Sports that has done a lot of stuff with Tom Brady and Simone Biles and Serena Williams. So, there are places that athletes start to feel comfortable with to telling their story because places have done it over and over again. So I do think it is hard, even for somebody like myself who has some history in the sports space. But my job at ESPN was my first job in sports. So there are a lot of people who have spent way longer in the sports realm than I have, and have deep relationships across leagues, across officials, across agents, across marketing. And so it is a kind of hard world to break into. And so if you are trying to break into sports storytelling, you have to go where those stories aren't. You're not going to get the Kansas City Chiefs follow series or the Dallas Cowboys series. You're not going to get that. You need to find the unknown sport, the unknown talent, the just great story. But those you're probably not going to sell to Netflix for 10 million bucks. So, you might be able to find those stories, but that's where the opportunity is going to be. It is going to be hard to break in because people have spent their whole careers in the space and
Well,
deserve
also,
that
there's so
access.
many companies like Omaha Productions, Peyton Manning, doing sports docs, and they did Quarterback on Netflix and Receiver on Netflix. Great series. I binge watched those. They were amazing. And that's a guy that can call his buddies Patrick Mahomes and say, "Hey, I'm doing a show,"
Yeah,
and
development's about access too.
yeah.
It's not just about coming up with a flashy idea. It's who can you get committed to your idea? Who can you get on board? Like having an idea is not necessarily worth anything unless it's, you have proven it to be so interesting in its own right. It has to have access baked in, especially on the documentary side. And yeah, not just Omaha, but Box to Box certainly. They are the best at what they do, and if you're a league looking for a storytelling thing, why wouldn't you call Box to Box? They have proven to be excellent at it.
And sports storytelling has evolved in that they figured out a way to not just do the sports story and talk about sports, but transcend sports to different facets of life. Like it makes sense. Like sports explains our world in a different way. And I think these companies and these like Formula One, like, it's not just about who's winning on the track, but these guys and the companies and the stress and all these other factors that bring to life, these different ways of tell stories. It's
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
just incredible.
sports is an excellent world or theater for storytelling. It's in a lot of ways a meritocracy, and also it's part social media. Like now, people want to know everything about your athletes, and it's just as important about what you're wearing to the tennis match, and who you're collabing with on the music side as your performance overall. And I think that's interesting. It makes athletes more multidimensional. It takes, like you said, it humanizes some of these athletes in a way that makes sense. Now, sports storytelling will go through a variety of eras, and now there's a lot of talk about the athletes themselves as executive producers. You're getting a kind of version of that story, but I have a more nuanced take on it. Yes, I think for some stories that makes sense that you wouldn't want them as an EP, but now if I'm an athlete, why should I sell you my story for free? Like if the market's willing to pay, why am I giving it to you for free? What, just for PR for myself? No, like you should be able to, as the subject of a film, and this is a big conversation in the documentary ethics space right now as well, which is what does the subject deserve? If they're giving you their story and it's a commercial enterprise, shouldn't they get paid for part of their story that you're basically exploiting, even if you're doing it artistically? It used to be there was zero money in documentaries. There was no way to make money. It was just an interesting thing you did. So then it's certainly convenient to be like, well, we're not paying our main subjects because it's a non-commercial entity as well. So yes, for your ethics and looking down. But now, if you're going to sell a series for $20 million, I think the participant should have a piece of that. But
Yeah.
certainly that makes it challenging from who's the storyteller, what story you're trying to tell overall, and how you're controlling it. And you see a lot of athletes just saying, you know what, I don't need the deep dive on me. Let me control it in my own way. Let me build my own audience. And it might not be everything, but that's okay. You are now seeing the era of people having multiple documentaries about themselves. They have a documentary when they're in this part of their life, and they have a documentary when they have this part of their life. I just saw the new Naomi Osaka doc that's on Tubi called Second Set. It's all about her post pregnancy. There's also the Netflix Naomi Osaka doc that exists, and I'm sure there'll be another one when she's at another moment in her life. So now what you're doing is you're creating chapters of these documentaries and not necessarily the like end all be all doc of somebody's life.
I think it's also been powerful social media, like Bryson DeChambeau, how he's totally changed his whole image and persona, just using social media and the power of that. And
Yeah, I mean, it's the power of YouTube, especially, and the power of the sports social creator. That's a relatively new field that exists, that now exists almost in every sport. So you have the YouTube golf scene, you have the YouTube tennis scene, you have the YouTube basketball scene. And I think it's great because it expands out the possibility of what people want to watch. And so it's not just, yes, people want to watch Bryson, and that's a whole thing, but there's a bunch of YouTube celebs who are just regular golfers that people watch way more than they watch PGA. And I think that's positive because it expands the sport and expands the personalities within it to beyond just the athletes.
Adam, like, are you a memorabilia collector, like baseball cards and that sort of thing? Are you into that stuff, or?
I grew up in the worst era to collect baseball cards. So
Yeah, me
without
too.
in the what they call the wax pack era, where it
Yeah, the
was
junk
just
box wax
junk
pack.
box. Yeah. So I got a lot in that realm. So I don't collect a ton in that realm. But one thing that I did start collecting when I was at ESPN, which is kind of continued now, is I actually collect in the rare book space, the rare and vintage book space. So I actually have quite a collection of rare sports books in that space. But that's something that is not a crowded space compared to if you wanted to talk about memorabilia in that whole space. I think again, that's also super exciting overall about driving interest, even though it's reached kind of, it's the millions and millions of dollars is kind of a wild ride. But I think overall, I think it's great. It's just another way for people to participate in sports.
Yeah, I just always feel like if you have a job like ESPN, you have all that access. You just think autographs, autographs, autographs. But
Uh,
a real
no,
pro probably doesn't get the autograph, right?
I'm still like, why do people want an autographed? I still feel like it's a strange thing to have like a signature of somebody. But again, I'm not a collector in that sense.
Oh, my favorite is when people get a signature tattooed on them. Now that's really, that's something.
Amazing.
It's a little far. A little far. It's a little far. I was going to ask you too. Did you start at William Morris?
I did. I came up through the mailroom in William Morris in New York, and that was a wonderful experience. I was beginning my career. I was an assistant for not just at William Morris, but for 3.5 years. I was an assistant and answering phones and listening on phone calls and learning the kind of nature of the biz itself. Working at an agency was a great opportunity for me at the beginning because it is a place where it is the center of a lot of information, and you can see a lot of things and how business actually happens. It just, for me, there just reached a point where it just felt like, did I want to spend my whole career on the telephone with people, and did I want to be helping, just represent other creative peoples, or did I want to be a creative person myself? But I enjoyed working at an agency and enjoyed the mailroom experience as well.
That's a classic, starting in the mailroom. And then how did you take the leap from mailroom to development?
I went from William Morris, and then I worked at Paradigm for a little while. And then I knew I didn't want to be an agent, and there was an assistant position. It was like assistant to a producer at a company. And I actually came up more in the scripted realm, like the indie scripted New York scene. And the company that I went to work for, Original Media, had done really amazing films like Half Nelson and A Guide to Recognizing Your Saints and Squid and the Whale. And I love these movies. And so I went to work for this small company. And kind of around that time they had like one reality show called Miami Inc. And that was the kind of like beginning of like the explosion of reality at that point. And so while a film can take 3-4 years to kind of get made and to get the financing, especially on the indie side, all of a sudden they were a company that went from one show to 15 shows in like a year and a half. So all the action was there. And the development side, it seemed really fun. This is kind of pre doing all your casting over Zoom. But instead we would have an idea, we'd get access, and then I'd fly to places and go spend time with the characters. And so I was able to drop into all kinds of interesting worlds. I helped develop the show Barbecue Pitmasters, So I ate barbecue for a good amount of time. I did a little bit of work
Yeah,
on swamp people and went down into the bayou and to Louisiana. And so that was really fun for my kind of mindset of just being able to be dropped into these worlds and figuring out, is there a show here? Who are the characters? How do we shoot a tape that we can then bring back to the network? So in a lot of ways, I came up in scripted, still love the scripted space, but it was just where the action was. And I started as an assistant and then just slowly worked my way at that company.
that's great.
On that sounds like just like your story.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's when I saw the William Morris thing, I was like, that's the one thing I wish I would have done. I started at a studio and worked my way up, and the one piece I wish I would have done was the agency thing. Because I just feel like the agency thing, people that do that, they build a network for life, like at the agency.
I don't know if I spent enough time to really build a network, but certainly there are folks who are in my mailroom, and certainly like the assistants when I was coming up who are now kind of running things. So at the very least, it's I don't know if it's like the most hardcore network, but it's somebody, it is people that would know who I am, and you build that network and reputation just by being in the business a long time.
Sean was in features and in LA, and then he decided that's where the action was, right, Sean? Like you kind of did the exact
The
same
exact
thing.
same thing. Yeah, yeah. I was in feature film development, and all my friends were leaving because everybody's just burning out. Like you get these projects, these scripts, they just pile up on your desk, 4 or 5 meetings a day, and they just keep piling up, and nothing ever moves forward. And these guys that were going into the unscripted space, they would have an idea, pitch the idea, shoot the sizzle, and they're in production. They got an order, and it all happened like within a 30-day period. I was like,
Yeah.
that sounds amazing.
That was a similar thing. And I think if you are going to do development on the script side, you better love to read,
Yeah,
and you better
yeah,
be excited about finding the next writer, and all of those types of things. So when people think about development, it's like, are you going to be able to put the time in to read 10,000 scripts and be able to evaluate them and be able to see the nuances of it? And I've spent a lot of time in scripted development, and I've read lots and lots of scripts, but there's another level when you're in it all the time. And when I was at ESPN and we would have some stuff with FX, and seeing some of the FX executives break down a script and watching how razor sharp they were. And it was just realizing, okay, I can read a script and tell you it's good or not and how to improve it. But these people who had read 100,000 scripts and were able to offer a nuance and a level of acuity to the story that was quite amazing, was definitely earned. And you have to be willing to, yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people who work on scripted, they spend their weekends, a script takes an hour to read. As much as people talk about throwing it in AI and getting the recap of it, all the people I know do the reading. They really read that stuff. So are you ready to read, 10, 15 hours on the weekend?
yeah.
That's what it
That's what it's
was.
like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it
exactly what it's
is.
like. Yeah,
Yeah. So people burn out of that if you don't love to read in that way.
yeah. And that's what happened to me. It was burnout, man. It's exactly what you said. You painted a great picture, and yeah, the reality TV unscripted development is so much more fun, in my opinion.
So is there such a thing as a bad idea or like a
Yes. Oh yeah, unformed ideas, basic ideas, ideas that aren't saying anything. And there are bad ideas that make it through. I think there's some that are just access based, where it's just a quick cash grab. Like, oh, we have access to this thing. They're in the press right now. Let's do it. But there's not really a story there. And again, I'm not against those. Sometimes you just want to hang out with a character, and so you don't really need a whole thing. But yeah, there are, most ideas are pretty bad, I would say, across the board.
So what's the difference between a good idea and a bad idea?
An idea that stays with you, an idea that says something a little bit more than just existing. Yeah, I think it's
Because I think
yeah,
everyone thinks they have a good idea. I
yeah,
think every single person. I mean, I've been pitched thousands of ideas and I'm not even in development. And people are like, oh, you're in TV. I have a good idea.
yeah.
You're like, no, that's
Yeah, well,
not a good idea.
that's the 10,000 hours. It might seem like that because they've never had another idea, or they've only had a couple, or only seen a couple, and so it's that idea of seeing 10,000 pitches and being able to nuance it, or reading 10,000 scripts. You hear from writers all the time of novels. People will they'll work so hard on their first novel or their first thing, and it's like, no, this is not that good, and they have to just put it in a drawer and move on to the next one. And uh yeah, I think people are just biased towards their own stuff, and people are excited about the possibility of what it is. And the advice is, you need to spend a lot of time on it. You really need to understand it from 360 degrees about why it's a show that should happen now, why it's an idea that really stands out. Uh, and it doesn't take, you can just Google what makes a great story. Does it have stakes? Does it have great characters? Does it have more than one great character? Is it an interesting world? Is it, there are lots of really basic stuff that people, I think, don't really go through that process because they're very excited just to have an idea.
Yeah.
So
That's
true.
okay.
Yeah. It's even the thing you touched on earlier too. It's like, do you want to be married to that for the next 2 to 5 years? And that's always my biggest thing when I hear an idea. It's like, it's kind of cool, but I don't want to be doing that for the next 5 years.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that I have gotten good at over my career is the ability to offer feedback to people, because uh, you know, sometimes I call it like an LA no. I have a great meeting with somebody. Oh, great. And then you just never hear back, and there's no
Yeah.
feedback, and they just kind of move on to the next thing. And it always
The
felt it's like
LA
always felt very strange to me. And I just take a lot
Uh,
of pride in myself of having hard conversations and giving people feedback, and making sure to, at the end of my feedback, to tell them, and remember, I'm just one person, and you should ignore this if it doesn't serve you, and go on your way. But people have lost a little bit of the ability to be uncomfortable in conversations. And I kind of pride myself on being able to have tough creative conversations, because then creatives trust me. They trust me that I'm going to give them my take on it. And I'm not just going to leave people hanging, because we all know after a yes, the best answer is a fast no.
With Neuhaus Ideas, are you gonna take is there a place people can submit an idea to you? I mean,
I'm not hard to find. If people have an
okay.
idea, they can find me. I am going to do a better job of billboarding myself in terms of the types of things that I'm looking for. Uh, but I am very easy to get in contact with if somebody has an idea. And yeah, I'm very open. I think one of the things I'm most proud of in my career is that I've worked across all different types of mediums. So I've done podcasts, and I've done scripted and non-scripted and short form, and I worked on a video game. And so I'm able to kind of look at an idea a bit of a 30,000 feet and see where it might fit. And right now, yeah, I'm still certainly in the sports space, and that's something that I'm passionate about, and still always looking in that space. But in general, nonfiction across the board is always interesting to me. I've never sold one, but I'm still infatuated with formats, and would love to sell a format sell a live PD, sell a Jeopardy, sell any of those things that could kind of repeat. That would be great. Uh, but for me, again, like, finding these categories. And now when I look at something, to your point, Sean, I'm asking myself the question, is this a 10-year idea? Is this a category I want to be involved with? So puzzles, to give you a sense of how that development journey went. There was a author who I really liked. His name was AJ Jacobs, and he wrote a book called The Puzzler that looked into all the subgenres of puzzles in his humorous way. And so jigsaws and escape rooms and mazes and crosswords and riddles and Rubik's cubes. And he wrote this really fun and clever book about it. And I loved the book, and I loved AJ. And then when I looked around in the puzzle space, I didn't really see a brand besides maybe the New York Times that had really kind of like established themselves in some consumer oriented way. And so that felt like an area that I knew a lot of people who are big puzzle people. I felt puzzle people are very habitual. They love to follow their daily stuff. And then when I thought further about puzzles, it's a great word. It's fun to say. It's fun to look at. Also, it's non-racial, non-gendered, non-socioeconomic. It's non-political. It just felt like a very brand safe category. And I just didn't see a lot of competition in the space. And the competition I did see was people trying to copy Wordle at the New York Times, trying to create a sticky game that might keep people on their site longer. But nobody was really coming at it from a culture perspective. And part of that had to do with the fact that puzzles can mean all those different communities overall. But it just felt like, here's a category, here's a talent who I felt like was special, here's a great title that I really liked, and here's something that we can develop lots of different things in the category. We could do a podcast, we could do TV shows, we could do physical products, we could do live events, we could do all different types of things in the space. And it felt like something that I might be able to do for a long period of time. And so I've moved a bit of my career away from, here's an idea, let me take it to Netflix, and then you sell it, and you sell it once to Netflix, and then they own it forever. So it's no longer, you have no upside in it. You get paid once. And then what? If it's a hit, you don't get paid more. You now have to go look for your other ideas. And so when I looked at the creator economy, I was saying, well, what audiences am I developing for myself as a development person? And I really wasn't. And so this was like, great, let's develop in the puzzle community. And great, I hope there are other companies that come out. This is not about being the only one in the space. This is about a category that I felt was really big, and an opportunity to put a flag in the sand and say, we're a part of this. We're a big umbrella in this space, and that this could churn off lots of different IP that would come out of it. And so sure enough, we've made 500 episodes in under 2 years. We've had a really easy time booking celebrities to come on our podcast because they love to puzzle like everyone else. We creating our first physical card game based a piece of IP off a puzzle we created. We've done live events where, so all of these things felt like a 360-degree play in a category that it felt like no one had grabbed. So to me, that was a real aha moment. And we've spent 2 years and really haven't made a dime. We've really invested everything. And so we're 2 years in, and we've developed a loyal audience. We've built it out. We're launching a Patreon. We're doing lots of different things in the membership space, but we've put a lot of time in on this. And the way that our core team thinks about this is that this is a 15-year project. This is something that we think can kick off money for us, that can kick off creative expression in lots of different categories over a long period of time. So we're just slowly, one brick by brick, slowly starting to do it. And the more we make content, the more we get known in the space, the more we keep showing up, we're hopeful that that will lead to bigger audiences and thus more brand money, more opportunities. But that is a great example of just committing to something in a long-term phase. Because we're 2 years of the podcast. So you might want to tack on another year and change before that of just development. So 3.5 years in, maybe 3 years in, and we haven't necessarily made any money. We've made a little bit that we've just for doing the podcast.
Where can people find that?
Anywhere you listen to your podcasts. It's called The Puzzler with AJ Jacobs, soon to be called Hello Puzzlers. And we're going to be launching a Patreon this fall, which is very exciting, and doing more things in the puzzle space.
That's great. That's cool.
What's your favorite puzzle?
What's my favorite puzzle? To be honest, I love a thing like a Glass Onion, the movie. Like, to me, that's a puzzle. Like a movie that has that, or Inception or something like that. Like, I love those storytelling puzzles. I do love a good word game. I think that's fun as well. But there are so many types that exist. I'm not necessarily like a big crossword person, but I do like Wordle, and I'm an open opportunity puzzler.
That's so cool. I love that. And tell us about the hot list, the nonfiction hot list.
Yeah, you guys just ripping off titles off of off the hot sheet. It got the hot list.
It's
but
hot, as long as
it's
it has hot in it.
Exactly.
It's all good.
Yeah, so the hot list has been incredibly gratifying. It came with the fact that the market has been really tight the last 2 years. And when I left ESPN, I took out 15 or 20 sports projects into the marketplace, stuff that I thought was incredibly persuasive, things with uh, big intellectual property, stuff with celebrity EPs, and I couldn't get anything set up. And it just felt like the ideas were strong enough that I trusted my gut, but that there was something going on in the industry in this kind of contraction phase. And I figured if I'm one producer who has a whole slate of stuff, then there must be lots of other stuff that is out there. Because as you said earlier, Jen, like Hulu's only picking 8 things a year. And so there's a lot of other stuff. So I wrote a post on LinkedIn uh, saying we needed a kind of blacklist of nonfiction projects. And the post itself went viral, and a lot of people in the comments had reached out to me saying we should do this. And so very quickly, we put together a team of 25 volunteers. We opened up a submission process for a thing that never existed before, unsure of how many things were actually going to come in. And I was unsure if it was going to be more early career stuff or what it was, but we got 640 submissions in something like 6 or 8 weeks. And it was from Oscar winners and Emmy winners and incredible artists. And so then we ran a kind of film festival evaluation process where we reviewed everything multiple times and gave scores and talked about things and curated to a list of 23 projects. We decided from the very beginning that we were doing this in service to the industry, that the industry itself needed a kind of curation, somebody to say, like, these things are just good. It doesn't matter what your algorithm says, your data says, like, these are just excellent, excellent projects. And also to embody the characteristics that we were hoping the industry would learn to adapt to. So things like the projects that didn't make the list, we send personalized pass emails to everybody, because how annoying is it to send in something and not hear back? Or this idea that we've all been conditioned that everything's supposed to take a long time. Well, from the day that I posted the LinkedIn post to us publishing the list was 100 days. So we did that. And then additionally, we were gatekeeping. We were not attached to these projects. So we created a document that in my whole career, I've never seen a document like this in the entertainment uh, world, where it was a live link with 23 projects on it with all their development materials on it. So people could see what all these processes were. And we had every project put the things they needed on the document as well. So you need posts, you need color, you need a social impact producer and their own contact information. All this under the thesis that let's not only look for the streamers of the world to give us money to solve all our problems, but instead let's look to the community around us. And maybe you need 200,000 to finish your film, but maybe there's a post house that has room for one in-kind contribution. And maybe they can offer that to your project that they love because something personal about the project speaks to them. Now, maybe you need 150K instead of 200K, and that increases your leverage. The less money you need, the more leverage you have in terms of taking a project out to market. And so we really just tried to highlight these projects and show up and be useful and help them. And what's been really gratifying is now these projects are starting to get finished and starting to have outcomes in the world. So we have projects that are premiering at Telluride, which is probably the most prestigious documentary festival you can have. We have stuff that we would assume is going to really hit at Sundance. So the curation is working. It's also putting us in an amazing opportunity to get a snapshot of the nonfiction market. I was able to see all of these different projects, hear all of the different ways and trials and tribulations for all these projects, and see some trend lines of what's coming next. So it's been incredibly gratifying. We continue to champion the projects on the list itself. We had another 4,000 people sign up to receive the list. We put together an Instagram community of 2,500 people that we're using to kind of share information and share resources. And all of that has been incredibly gratifying to see this incredible creative come in and see stuff that is not a perfect fit for the market, but is just objectively an amazing story with amazing access. And we're hoping that by doing this curation and by building this community, that we can help more projects get made and that we might inspire some change in the industry. While we've been championing these projects, we're right now doing a new initiative underneath the umbrella of the Nonfiction Hot List called Fresh Eyes, where every project that did not make the hot list, which was 600 plus projects, we sent out an email to them saying, do you want a free feedback session? It's like, when was the last time you applied to something, didn't get it, and then people reached out to you and offered you a session? And what we realized in talking with, dozens and dozens of filmmakers is that a lot of them are just in their own world trying to make these projects happen. And they're really looking for just industry feedback for all the stuff that, Sean, you were talking about earlier. Should I continue developing this? What am I missing from my materials? How can I make this more sellable? Are there any other ways and that I could make this happen? And so we had 120 projects opt in to the Fresh Eyes thing. We've been doing these meetings over the last 4 weeks, having meetings with all of these projects. And in return for the meeting, we're having all the projects, we're basically inspiring an energetic exchange. So we're telling people it's a free feedback session, but in order to have that session, you must promise to send the hot list to 10 other people, or you must make a social media post about it. So anything to kind of create community around it, because even when we sent out the list themselves, there might be a project about space and that's on the list. And, by putting that project with 22 other projects, now somebody else who's a fan of this other project works at a space place and might have an access to money that this one individual project never would have had before. So bringing these projects together creates an aggregation power that kind of creates more visibility for all the projects. And so we're eager to do that and eager to help these projects. And even the ones that did not make the list, there was probably another 70 projects that were just as good that could have made it. So it's been something that has been, I've used the word gratifying twice, but I'll use that word again. It's been gratifying and it's been inspirational. You talk about, Jen, how do you not be broken down by all the failure and the pitches? Well, if you're reading all these projects and seeing the blood, sweat, and tears that people are putting into these things and the amazing access and content that they have, you can't help but be inspired. And this feels like something that we're doing, again, in service to the community. And we're now trying to figure out, what does version 2 look like? How do we create a partnership? How do we create more impact? Because we know if we roll out version 2 of the hot list, we might get 3,000 submissions. And what is the power that we can create with that type of energy behind us?
I cannot think of a more perfect project for you, who's
Well,
like a champion of ideas and a champion of building community. It's just like, this could be your greatest thing ever, Adam. Is
it's another non-paid position that that I am doing. So there's a
it's
limit to it.
perfect.
There's a limit to it as well. And again, I think as a development person, you are constantly helping other people's ideas. And I work as a producer and helping other people's ideas shine or be stronger. And I think there becomes a point as well when you, as a creative, when you start to think, I don't just want to be curating other people's stuff. I want to be stepping into a more directorial or authorship space in the creative space. And so while I love doing it, I'm also very passionate about coming up with ideas that I love and that I'm championing that come from me, and finding that balance. But it has created community, and the again, the networks and the streamers have all cut back so much in ordering that there's just like a clog of really great projects. And it's put me into interesting conversations around distribution, interesting conversations around funding and alternative funding. And so that's why I have a lot of faith that there's something new emerging, because I'm seeing it on the day to day. I'm seeing how filmmakers are taking more control about finding their audiences earlier in the process, so that they might not need to only sell in a distribution deal to a streamer.
Well, that brings us to the short film distribution. I saw a post that
Sure.
you put on LinkedIn. If you could explain that, because it was that born out of this hot list
Yeah,
exercise?
it
Okay.
was. Yeah. I mean,
So
so the hot list came through, it was 640 projects, and it was amazing. It's like, here are 8 nature docs, here are 8 mental health docs, here are 8 AAPI docs. Like, all of these things just kind of emerged. And I think a lot of times we put so much stress on an individual project to deliver returns. And I just saw all these categories, and I started to think about all the doc shorts that I watched, and my own interest in the sports space, and that there is no business for documentary shorts. It's frequently used as something, as an artistic expression for a festival, but they're not really bought or commissioned by the streamers. And so you have amazing work that after a festival has nowhere to go. Some people put some stuff on YouTube, but most great stuff just ends up being buried somewhere. And it felt like there was an opportunity to use my curatorial skills to find 30 amazing sports documentaries, especially in the short space, and gather them up in the same way that the aggregation of the hot list like helps all those projects. An individual single short doc has got no chance in an avalanche of content. But if I have 30 projects, and if they're just sitting there, so the filmmakers are willing to experiment more in distribution, and if I'm able to gather the rights of projects that I think are truly amazing in the sports space, well, then maybe I can go out with that package of projects to a fast channel, to a brand, and say, hey, I have done all this work for you. I have curated incredible sports stories here. And now you can just, license this as something to put on your channel, your website, your streamer, or whatever it is. And it felt like there was, again, in a way that we talked about earlier, that the larger sports media companies don't really have time to go through those things because there's not necessarily an immediate financial gain for it. So I decided, just given the success of what happened with the hot list when I wrote, decided to use LinkedIn and use social media as a way to spread that word. And because of that, I've been having, again, dozens of conversations with filmmakers and producers and streamers and brands about what this might look like and how they might get involved. And so it feels gratifying to know that I've hit a nerve on something. And now the question is, can I find enough projects that I can truly stand behind and to say are excellent? And can I do that and take that out to market and create something special?
That's
Wow.
great.
I mean,
That's
that's
great.
incredible. It's quite a feat to go through all that material and curate it. And
There's a reason it's not features and it's shorts. So I don't have the time to watch 150 features in the space, and that there is a market for that, so it becomes a little more complicated. But shorts, I think, just again was a place that nobody's really looking in that way, and felt like there's an opportunity. And I think a little bit in development, you have to go where the puck is going next, or go where it's moving next. And if you're having a hard time selling shows, you need to find other ways to get in front of content or find other things that are really interesting. And so that's kind of what I'm doing.
but besides distribution, I mean, the hardest part about making these films is getting money for them and getting them done. I mean, that is a tremendous hurdle.
Yeah, and that's why I think I'd focus on projects already finished. So again,
Yeah.
projects that have played festivals, that have demonstrated
Yeah.
tremendous quality because they've played a bunch of festivals, and now they're just sitting there. And again, the other thing that makes me very excited about where the media landscape is right now is that there are a lot of tools right now that could be used to distribute your own stuff. There are ways to create, maybe I find this collection and I don't sell it to a fast channel. Maybe I just put it in a little walled garden and charge people $1 to come watch a film. And maybe that's something that's interesting. You
Adam's
can now,
curated
yeah.
list.
I mean, I have some kind of a name in the sports landscape, and if I can
I
really stand
see
behind
it.
them, yeah. And by the way,
Yeah,
a
no.
dollar and $2 from 100,000 people, well, could add up, especially if you go around the world for it. So again, the tools of charging people online have gotten so good in the last 10, 15 years, and there's now a lot of playbooks. This is what all the creators are doing. They are finding ways to monetize their audience, and that really wasn't possible before. And now, yeah, if you have the goods and people want it, they will spend some money to access it.
What about brands? Are you a fan? And it seems to be a trend right now. Like, you have to have a brand to pitch this project. I mean, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I think any money in is helpful. So if brands that want to spend on content, I think it's a smart thing. I will say that it's never the full answer to what you think it's going to be. You think it's going to be, oh, they're going to pay for it. Just put their name in the credits and all my things will be figured out. You're inviting another partner into the process, which can be challenging. I think if you were to make a list of the best branded stuff of all time, it would not hold a candle to the best non-branded stuff of all time. I think sometimes we don't necessarily get the level of storytelling on the brand side. Um, and I think there's some, I still think there's a lot of evolution in terms of how brands think about these things. A lot of time a brand is coming on board a single film. And so then that film needs to fulfill all their KPIs and all their ROIs because this one film. And that feels like too much pressure to put on a single piece of content. And that really they should be considering creating sustainable pipelines for them to help with more than one thing and to be in the space longer term. But Sean, to your earlier point, you might sometimes convince a CMO to be involved in a film, and 2 years later, it's a different CMO, and now you're at ground zero again. So I don't think it's the answer that everybody thinks it is, but I'm very thankful for any money in the system. Um, and so if brands are going to step up and do that and be a part of it, and by the way, they should, and they should I am in favor of diminishing the importance of a 30-second ad. I think if we could siphon some of that money into long form, I think everyone would be the better for it. But I just don't think it's the answer. And I think a lot of people are going to spend a lot of time jumping through hoops in order to try to unlock some money that in the end might not be what they think it is. What
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
man's opinion. One man's opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. One other thing, you're talking about fast channels. I don't know that everybody knows what a fast channel is, but uh, what does it take to start a fast channel? Like, could you just with your your shorts idea?
Yeah, I don't know if
Uh,
it's quite enough content to
okay.
start one
Yeah.
potentially, but yeah, if there was a pipeline, you certainly could. Again, the tech is no longer the impediment to the process. That's the best thing. The tools that you can now get off the shelf were the things that only the networks and streamers had, and now they are really available for everybody, and that's the exciting part. So
So what's
you'll
a
see
fast channel
it's
to
just
people
like
that don't know?
your own streamer. It's just your own what is it? It's an ad supported streaming service. Um so they could be created out of anything if you have enough content. And again, we're entering a space where there'll be a million channels. Uh, you know, and that's great. I think that's great. If you can find an audience for it, you can find a fast channel for Murder She Wrote. Or you can find a fast channel, and you can find a fast channel for This Old House. I think there's like on one or whatever. Like there are these places where it's just that amount of content that is there. And then there's the other ones like Tubi and Pluto, which are more AVOD ones. But yeah, it's like video on demand, but streaming. And yeah, if you have enough content. So again, a lot of the things that I'm thinking about these days is how to own a piece of the content itself and not just sell all the rights. So that maybe if you own something that's really excellent, maybe you can license it once. Maybe then the rights revert back to you and you can sell it again. And maybe if it's really evergreen, the rights can revert back to you again and you can sell it again. And so now we're thinking about content as an asset and not just something that you sell once and move on to the next thing, a single use piece of content, to use a metaphor.
Yeah, I was just recently pitched by a group of guys on they want to be, they want to do a show about them. And I'm like, let's just do it for YouTube. You guys don't I'm trying to make them understand this is better. We own it.
Correct.
Every time this thing airs, you get paid. If you do something for Discovery Channel, you're not going to get paid on reruns. You're not going to see any money on that. You get one little fee, and it's not much to be
Yeah.
talent
I
on a
mean, I
show like
talked a
that.
lot, certainly in the last era of reality that you really only start making money in season 3 of a show. And so that, and the rights that you signed away at the beginning of season 1, like you said, kind of hamstring you a little bit as you move forward. And they put out that list every month of where people are watching stuff, and I think Netflix is at 8.8% and Disney's at 4.7% in terms of the people watching, but YouTube is over 13%. It's the number one viewed thing. And the other amazing piece of data that has come after that is that most of that viewing is on connected televisions. It's
Isn't that
not
amazing?
it's not on your phone or on your computer anymore. It's on the big screen that you have. And so, yeah, I think if you have a way of making content and continuing to make content now, not YouTube's not the answer to everything. You still have to stand out in an incredibly challenging marketplace. And you have to find a way to pay for it, and you have to be consistent about putting stuff up, and you're kind of just getting an ad cut of something. But for all the other reasons you said, you control your IP, you control your creative, you control your community, and find ways to do that. So yeah, there are a lot of places and a lot of athletes actually that have started to do this as well. Like, why would I sell a doc series to Netflix? Anthony Edwards, the NBA superstar, he started a YouTube channel. Last year they did, 5 or 6 episodes that they got funded themselves and put it out. And I think it's really smart because now it was called year 5, and now this will be year 6 for him in the NBA. And I'm sure he'll do more episodes that will come out, and he'll be able to control that and control the ad inventory and just kind of own the creative along the way.
Smart.
Yeah. All these guys, I just remembered Noah Lyles has a production company now too. All these athletes starting their own content companies.
Yeah, well, they're all
Um,
all starting podcasts too. I mean,
that sounds like New York.
Travis and Jason. I mean, they're the ones who, like, you can go from 0 to $100 million in the fastest of any of the content. So that's why you're seeing all these athlete-led podcasts start. And I think it's smart. I think it's smart business. If you can gather people and get people to pay attention to you, the production dollar is zero pretty much, and the upside can be tremendous.
Yeah, and plus they have that one thing too, where they have access, right? They have that access.
Yeah, they start with an audience,
Yeah,
assumingly,
yeah.
But I will also say, you also see a lot of announcements. You read the trades, you read everything, you read a lot of announcements. And I've always wanted someone to go back and actually do an accounting of what happened to all the projects that got announced, because so many things get announced. Maybe they run a season 1 and then they're gone. And it takes a lot to break through because you're no longer competing against everything that's out in the marketplace. You're competing against everything in the marketplace and everything that's ever been made before. And so that is a challenging landscape to get attention, and you need to be in it to win it. You can't do it casually. I'm trying to put myself into ownership positions. So again, can I own a piece of the audiences that I'm helping create? The hope is that the puzzler can kind of become a business that just cooks along every month and kicks off money and opportunity, and that I can keep open a lane for exciting documentary projects without having to think about some of the financial implications of it. And then I'm looking to partner. I'm looking to partner with brands. I'm looking to partner with athletes. I'm looking to partner with people to create IP that we could sell in a variety of ways, and looking for opportunities and places where I might help curate the ideas for a place, come up with ideas, help launch companies from the very beginning, and own a piece of those companies long term.
It's a great
Sweet.
vision. I love that. Is there any particular projects that you're excited about that you can talk about, or is it all
Um,
in process?
No, it's all in process. I mean, who knows when I don't want to date this podcast or something to fall apart, but I have projects that are in development at networks and streamers. So I'm still playing that game. As I mentioned before, many times now, the puzzler, we are building this direct to consumer creator economy. We're launching a Patreon. We're going to launch season 3 in November. We have our first physical card game that we're going to be distributing. So we're doing those types of things. And then I do hope that we can turn the nonfiction hot list into an ongoing service to the community, but also as a place for me to find excellent projects and opportunities as well. And this also extends to my personal life. My wife has a wine substack called Wine Ideas, Isabel Neuhaus. And it's the same type of thing. We are just trying to create community and trying to create an audience that she can deliver her incredible wine writing and wine education. But in addition, she could, do private events and cellar curation and a wine club and travel itineraries and just be somebody's one-stop shop for excellent wine choices. So I think, again, it applies everywhere. It's all about, can you find an audience and can you continue to develop that audience? That's really where I'm trying to push my career, is to own a piece of those audiences.
I subscribe to Isabel's Substack. It is amazing.
Thank you.
She has so many fun ideas that I've never thought about, like, like how cold do you keep your wine? And
I think wine is a very intimidating space, and I see this all the time because when we go out, people apologize for their lack of wine knowledge to her before she's even opened her mouth, and so I think there's a real opportunity for level, smart, interesting wine education, so that we can enjoy this very special product.
I love it. I think she's literally stepping into I haven't seen anything like this before. So she's stepping into a space and filling a void that's very important because she's a sommelier. How do you say that? I can never say that word.
Sommelier.
Sommelier. Uh, and that is intimidating. Like the world of wine is intimidating because it does require a bit of knowledge and experience and a palate and all this stuff. But she breaks it down and I love that. It's a fun way to embrace wine and I've been really enjoying her Substack. So
Love that. I'll
that's
pass that along. But yeah, it's
yeah,
all
please
about
do.
it's all about audiences. It's all about, and again, this idea that not everything needs to be a million people to actually create money and value in your life, and that can you get 1,000 true fans, or can you find people who are willing to support the things that you're doing, or if you're
Yeah.
bring value to their lives.
I mean, look at OnlyFans. You
Yeah.
can just come up with all kinds of ideas.
Exactly. Yeah. And that should be really empowering to people, and to swing it back around, the kind of main advice that we've been giving a lot of documentary filmmakers is that you can't wait until the end of your project to start marketing your project. And that
Mm.
actually you need to start building that audience, honestly, at the very beginning of your film, but at the very least, like part way through. Because if you find enough people, you can monetize them directly and have that money come directly to you and still be able to sell your project to another space. But especially if you have a niche that you're a part of, we saw a documentary in the circus space, and it's like, all right, find every circus organization in the US, find every circus school, find everyone who's in like those types of worlds, and get them interested in your project. And the interesting thing is that if you find your audience first and build a list of a couple thousand or 10,000 people, if you bring that list to the end of your project, you will get a bigger deal from a streamer if by having that list. So it's annoying for filmmakers because now they're saying like, now I got to market as in addition to making the film. But it's like, yeah, you do. You got to build your own audience along the way. And so we're encouraging all filmmakers and creators to start audience building at the very beginning of their project and allowing the audience in on the making of their project, which can be sensitive for some artists because some artists just want to work on the doc and make it shiny and special and then release it. And I totally understand that. But not every project demands that. And there's a lot of value of allowing people into the process in an authentic way and building fanhood along the way.
That's really good advice and something, just something we can adapt to in this social media world. Like now that you can do that. Like, 10 years ago you might not have been able to build that audience like you can now.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, the tools that are available now are incredible. And so it might take learning those tools. I'm still learning those tools, and it's a bumpy process of learning all these tools, but there are playbooks and there are tools and there are ways to do it now that has just never existed before in this moment.
I think it's really cool what you're doing with building community because that's going to be the most powerful thing. Those two communities you're building, and it's great, man. It's
Now I
really
just want to
smart.
add build and monetize communities. That's the second part of the equation.
Yeah, that's important. You gotta eat too. You
That's right.
know that what would you say about the future of sports storytelling? I know you're kind of focused on the short story, but like in general, where do you sports storytelling? It seems to have evolved so much over the
Yeah, I'm
years.
invested in the whole space. I think one of the metaphors that I like to use is, not to think of sports storytelling as a universe or as and so you might have the sun, which is like a big documentary project, but you might have a planet that's a podcast. You might have a short. You might have all of these different things, and so I think I just think you'll have more. more athletes and teams just directly going to their audiences. I think that's what you're really going to see. And so you're already seeing it. You're seeing lots of the content operations at a lot of pro teams now has like taken a huge step up. And it's not just social, and it's not just like making a good Instagram. It's really about thinking about the value that can be created through storytelling in a much more holistic way. So I think you're going to start to see that. You're seeing some of the leading teams do that. I know the Golden State Warriors have hired somebody to be their head of content in that way, but you're going to start to see all the teams uh, bring that in and or develop that from people that are internal there. And again, be able to think about things more holistically. Like you could tell a story through merchandise. You could tell a story at the stadium. I'm a big fan of the Savannah Bananas. And if you followed what they've done, like the storytelling that they do, sure, everyone sees the social stuff. If you go to a live show, which they call it a show, not a game. If you go to a live show, you will see the storytelling there is an unbelievably well thought out and extends in so many different directions. And so it's an investment, but now that these teams are worth so much money and the stakes are so high, I think that's going to be the next iteration of it. But again, consumers are smart. So if you put out a schlocky access thing that's not that good, people aren't going to watch it. This has been the other kind of secret thing that people aren't really talking about is most of the sports documentary series are not that well rated. Some of them have done okay, but the majority are not really rating in the way that you would think. And I think some of that has to do with the quality, and some of that is just like there's a limit. People who are watching sports, if you're watching an ESPN project or if you're watching a live sport, the one of the reasons Drive to Survive did so well is that people didn't really know who had won those races. They were casual fans watching the storytelling, and so they were able to be in that moment and know. And it gets harder when it's a project where you already know the ending. Yes, you can follow along how they went there, but lots of sports people want to watch the next thing. They want to see the game. They want the unscripted. They don't necessarily want to watch something where they know what's already happened. But I think of where it's going, and I think there's going to be this incredible partnership between the athletes themselves who are now showing up to pro sports or to colleges or whatever with massive followings already, and creating that partnership between the brand that is the team and the brand that is the athlete. I think you're going to see a lot of interesting stuff. And I'm hoping that there's room for somebody like myself and my skill set to help navigate those creative decisions, to help say, this is not a good idea. This is a better idea. Have you thought about this? How do we create win-win scenarios between the athlete and the club? What matters for the club? What's the value of storytelling, even if it doesn't lead to uh, you know, a sale at Netflix. I keep using Netflix, a sale at Apple. Maybe it leads to somebody re-upping their season tickets next year. Maybe it leads to somebody spending a little bit more in the merch shop. So there's a lot of value to content, and we have a hard time measuring some of that, measuring brand impact. And that's been part of the challenge on the brand side and part of the challenge overall. But I think we should just get over the trying to measure every single thing and just realize that quality storytelling is going to be something that lifts all ships.
I say back to what you were saying, Adam. I feel like this offseason, the NFL, I think every team on, what is it, teams.com, wherever that site is where you can find work, every one of them was looking for a long form storyteller. I swear, I think it was all 32 teams, whatever it is. I applied for a couple and interviewed at a couple of them, but almost all of them are going exactly what you're saying. They're all
the only issue I would say, if any team owners are listening to the Hotsheet right now, they're looking to do it where they get somebody. They want like a one-man band. They want someone who can come in, film, and edit, and put it together. And I would just say, on behalf of all development executives, there's a value in having another person in the room to help with the filmmaker who's making stuff, to help connect the dots among other parts of the organization.
Some of these job descriptions, it's like shoot, get access, develop, film, edit, manage the budget, do the teams, know how to get you're just like, that's like 5 jobs, you know?
Exactly.
But then
And
they
you end
want
up with
that for $300 a day.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
And
You're
that's the
like,
thing. And then you end up with, well, what you do is you end up with young whippersnappers who are excited about the opportunity. And by the way, that's not a terrible strategy for a team either, to try to find those young people to do it. But there's a cap on the level of storytelling you'll get from that approach. And so it feels like the smart teams will start to understand of how to put together still nimble teams, but teams that understand story, or having somebody in the mix to help be somebody who can guide outside just the creative of capturing and throwing it up on Instagram or TikTok and trying to get more views in that way, but thinking about how do you create enduring formats, enduring IP, or just help have like a cohesion among everything you're doing and not burn out your person who's like shooting and editing and cutting and managing the budget, which I agree is 5 jobs.
Yeah. And most likely it's all wanted now. It's all due
Yeah,
today. You know, it's like,
right, exactly. But what I love is that you know, like Formula One, I think they literally changed the way you know you view sports, which we touched on earlier. But what's neat is it's not just this linear one and done thing. The game is over and the race is over, and then the story is over. You know, I'll hear my husband watching on YouTube like Formula One races, and he's like, "Oh my god, you know, Lando won!" And so we know who won, but we can't wait for the Formula One series, you know, to recap all the stuff that you know. So it's going forwards and backwards, and it's not just going linearly, but it's like this 360 view. And that YouTube show, you know, supports the Netflix show. And I never even cared about Formula One until I saw that show and got invested in the drivers and the owners and understood the sport a little bit more. I was invested from a story point, not just like who won, but who are these people and what are they doing?
But
And
I would say the part that people leave out of that is that Box to Box made an amazing series.
oh
Like
my
they are
gosh,
incredible
so good.
storytellers, and it's an expensive show to make. And the leads of that company are elite storytellers. And so what happens is people say, you know, we got it all the time, even when I was at ESPN. Oh, I want to do the Drive to Survive of blank. Like just trying to rip and copy a thing when you have to understand that it takes excellence to make the excellence as well. And that just having behind the scenes, it doesn't make something good or compelling. It also has to actually be good.
100%.
box to box. I mean, a lot of the stuff they're doing, you know, just even that show you're talking about, or even Full Swing, whatever it is. If you, you know, if you're pitching that, it's like you're never going to get that access, and somehow
Yeah.
they've gotten all this access. It's just
Well, that's the
totally
thing.
amazing.
They were, you know, if you're going to ask for the, you know, the Drive to Survive of blank, you go to the places that made Drive to Survive. So they got to be the experts in all of it. And like you said, Full Swing worked, but Breakpoint, the tennis one, which I really liked, didn't come back, you know, after season 1 or season 2. And so just because, again, there's so many things that, again, this idea that all sports storytelling is through the roof and blockbuster hits is not true at all. That a lot of it has been pretty mediocre from a rating standpoint.
Hmm. That's interesting.
Adam, do you have a favorite celebrity or athlete story, like somebody you've met?
Oh well, I you know I'm a I'm a big UConn women's basketball fan, have been my whole life. We were season ticket holders. I'm from Connecticut. And so over the course of my ESPN days, I got to make a podcast with Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi. I made a 30 for 30 with Maya Moore. You know, these were, you know, some of my favorite athletes of all time. And I have an audio project with Diana Taurasi, which is really amazing as well. So that stuff has been fun when it fully is full circle in that way.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, Sue Bird, legend out here in Seattle.
Legend everywhere. She's she's one of those I would be betting on whatever she's involved with moving forward.
That's great. That's cool.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your ideas and ideas on ideas and Newhouse ideas and sports stories. And this has been so much fun talking to you and we being here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your time.